Good evening. Glad you're here. Y'all, I'm going to talk about tonight something that is flying under most of you, under y'all's radar. I am so glad to, I'm glad to have you join me tonight. What we're going to talk about is something large that is happening right now in American politics, where faith is no longer just influencing politics. It is increasingly shaping policy, power, political identity. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, because I know that a lot of you are not aware, although you are seeing the impact, you're not aware of what is behind it. I am Dorothy Burton. I'm your host, and here we talk about faith, we talk about politics, and we talk about leadership. And our programming is a little bit different from other political analysts in that we try and look at the whole thing and not just just be political shields or what's it called? What's the word? Anyway, rants. Don't do political rants. We come here to learn and we come to share. And I'm so glad y'all are here. I'm going to start tonight. Holler at me in the comments if you have heard of the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches. If you've heard of the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, I want you to holler at me in the comments, because most people have not heard of this. Hey, y'all. Hey, Susie. Hey, Renee. Most of y'all have not heard of this. It is a new movement. Although you see the impact of it, you may not know who's behind it and the organization that's behind it. And it is spreading, this church, this evangelical Christian nationalism church. It is quickly spreading from a small town in Montana across the United States. Pete Hegseth, the national, the guy that the guy that's over the army, the guy that's over the military, he gets a lot of his ideas from this church because his pastor is the founder of this church. And interestingly enough, this church, the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, just opened a branch or planted a church right in our nation's capital. So I'm going to start by showing you a clip. Says, you said, no, I'm Catholic. Susie said, yes, she's heard of it. It's never, I'm telling you, most people have not heard of this church that has now hundreds of churches across the country, now in Washington, D.C. And this church is behind a lot of the policy that we're seeing. The SAVE Act, the changes that we're seeing in the military under Hegseth when it comes to now mandatory prayer meetings and all that kind of stuff, women not voting. It comes from a guy named Doug Wilson and from the church that he founded. So let's look at, first of all, let's look at this clip. I think this clip is about 4 minutes long. And I want you to really hear, what this guy, what this is about, because it's just really almost unreal. Let me see. And I'm gonna be mad at myself if I didn't put it up here. I know I did. Hang on a second. Let me see. Ha. There we go, right there.
A new church has quietly opened here in Washington, just 3 blocks from the nation's capital. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, attended the first service. The church is part of the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, and its aim is global Christian domination under a strict interpretation of the Bible. In this Situation Room special report, my colleague Pamela Brown went to Moscow, Idaho, to meet the controversial pastor behind it.
Christchurch senior pastor Doug Wilson makes no apologies for his beliefs on God and country.
I'd like to see the town be a Christian town. I'd like to see the state be a Christian state. I'd like to see the nation be a Christian nation. I like to see the world be a Christian world.
And now Wilson's controversial views as a Christian nationalist are gaining sway in the nation's center of power with the recent opening of his new church and high-profile parishioners like Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Is planting a church in D.C. part of your mission to try to turn this into a Christian nation?
Yes. So every society is theocratic. The only question is who's theo. In a secular democracy, it would be demos, the people. In a Christian republic, it'd be Christ.
Well, what would you say to someone watching this and say, look, I'm a Muslim. Who are you to say your worldview is better than mine, that your God is better than mine?
Well, if I went to Saudi Arabia, I would fully expect to live under their God's rules.
But you said earlier that you want this to be a Christian world.
Yes.
So you want to supplant their religion with your Christian.
Yes, by peaceful means, by sharing the gospel. There's a lot of work yet to do. I believe that we are working our little corner of the vineyard.
Wilson's Little Corner, a picturesque campus nestled on the outskirts of downtown Moscow, Idaho, is growing by the day with thousands of like-minded Christians. Parishioners of his church, known as Kirkers, own and operate several businesses downtown next to liberal college town stores.
If it's true.
Why did he yell boo? Because it's
Because of me.
because of you.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
That's a regular day for you.
That's not unusual.
A big focus of his Christian movement is on a patriarchal society where men are dominant and women are expected to submit to their husbands.
Women are the kind of people that people come out of.
So you just think they're meant to have babies. That's
Well,
it. They're just a vessel.
No, it doesn't take any talent to simply reproduce biologically. The wife and mother, who is the chief executive of the home, is entrusted with 3 or 4 or 5 eternal souls.
I'm here as a working journalist and I'm a mom of 3.
Good for you.
Is that an issue
No.
for you?
And no, it's not automatically an issue.
Josh and Amy Prince, along with their 4 kids, moved here from Washington State.
Do you see Amy as your equal?
Yes and no, in the sense that we're both saved by grace. We're absolutely on equal footing, but we have very different purposes, God-given.
But do you see yourself as the head of the household, as the man?
He is the head of our household. Yes, and I do submit to him.
So like moving here
I was just
was
going to say that.
ultimately your decision.
Yes.
That's a great
great
example.
example.
Wilson says in his vision of a Christian society, women as individuals shouldn't be able to vote. His fellow pastors, Jared Longshore and Toby Sumter, agree.
In my ideal society, we would vote as households. And I would ordinarily be the one that would cast the vote, but I would cast the vote having discussed it with my household.
But what if there's your wife doesn't want to vote for the same
Right.
person as you?
Right. Well, then that's a great opportunity for a good discussion.
There are some who have gone so far as to say that they want the 19th Amendment repealed.
I would support that. And I'd support it on the basis that the atomization that comes with our current system is not good for humans.
And Wilson, a veteran himself, is unapologetic about his view that women shouldn't be in certain leadership or combat roles.
Looking at the leadership page for Christ Church, it's
Right.
all men. Do you accept women in leadership roles in the church and in government?
In the church, no.
Why?
Because the Bible says not to.
Well, that's not what happens in the Bible. Women do lead all the time.
Progressive faith leader Reverend Jennifer Butler is concerned about Wilson's growing influence.
He is rapidly gaining in power. He has hundreds of churches established around the country. They actually literally want to take over towns and cities, and they have access to this administration.
Wilson is part of a broader Christian nationalist movement making inroads with the Trump administration, with a newly created faith office led by evangelical pastor Paula White Cain, and people seen right outside the White House entrance praying and speaking in tongues.
We are standing on the soil of the White House, and we are declaring your word.
How precious.
And now there's a monthly prayer service at the Pentagon, initiated by Hegseth, Wilson's highest level connection to the administration.
It's not organizationally tied to us, but it's the kind of thing we love to see.
For his part, Hegseth has publicly praised Wilson.
Now we're standing on the shoulders of a generation later, the Doug Wilsons and the others.
Wilson's influence spans the globe with more than 150 churches. Lennox Califangua moved to Moscow from Africa.
It's really because I wanted to be a part of a community that was doing something, and especially in building Christian institutions.
Are there other Black families in this community?
Oh, absolutely. There's a few Black families.
Wilson maintains all are welcome to his church, but he's also not shying away from his past controversial statements on race.
Do you still believe what you said back in the 90s, that there's a mutual affection between master and slave?
Yes, it depends on which master and which slave you're talking about. Slavery was overseen and conducted by fallen human beings, and there were horrendous abuses, and there were also people who owned slaves who were decent human beings and didn't mistreat them. I think that system of chattel slavery was an unbiblical system, and I'm grateful it's gone.
What he also wants gone, same-sex marriage, because he thinks homosexuality is a crime.
In the late 70s and early 80s, sodomy was a felony in all 50 states. That America of that day was not a totalitarian hellhole.
So you would like America to go back to that?
Yep.
Wilson maintains his ultimate goal is to bring about the second coming of Christ through his work, and rejects critics' claims he's trying to make the dystopian world of The Handmaid's Tale a reality.
I'm not a white nationalist. I'm not a fascist. I'm not a racist. I'm not a misogynist.
How far off do you see a Christian nation, like a full-on Christian theocracy?
Oh, 250 years.
250 years.
Yeah, honestly, that's yes.
What you see. But you do think it will happen?
Yes, I do. We're not going to usher in anything ourselves. We're really genuinely pioneers.
And thanks to our Pamela Brown for that very special report. CNN, by the way, reached out to the U.S. Defense Department.
Okay. If you heard what he said, and if you look at what's happening in Washington, D.C. today with the SAVE Act, with what's going on with Hegseth in the Army, I mean, the military, I don't want y'all to take this lightly, because, you know, I months ago when I started talking about NAR, I started talking about the takeover of government by Christian nationalism. And a lot of people don't know that Dallas and North Texas are ground zero for Christian nationalism. If Christian nationalism had a headquarters, the headquarters would be in Dallas, Texas. It would be in North Central Texas. And you see where the Republican Party, and I, you know, all full disclosure, y'all know my background, know that I was a conservative Republican for 40 years, literally for 40 years, from 1978 to 2018. So when I say things about the Republican Party, and when I say things about the conservative evangelical movement, it's not me ragging on them, because I was one of them. I was deeply one of them. I was one that had to deconstruct from all of that. I used to teach that stuff. I used to teach Seven Mountain dominionism. So when I sound the alarm here, it's not like I'm ragging on the Republican Party or Christianity or anything. I just know it because I was so immersed in it. And what I teach and what I try to convey here on Tuesday night is the truth, so that people will know not only what's happening, but why it's happening and what to expect. Now, you heard him say, let me back up and say this for a minute. It was funny, not funny in a comical way, but he never called slavery, chattel slavery, what it was, and it was sin. He could call it, good people doing, it was an unbiblical system. No, it was a sinful system. And the brother that was there, I call him a brother in Christ because he's a believer. However, that's as far as it goes. The African brother that's part of this movement, you have to know that Africans, I'm talking about Africans. I'm not talking about African Americans. I'm not talking about Black Americans. I'm talking about Africans. Black Africans from Africa are much more conservative than U.S. Blacks and U.S. African Americans. So you will see, when you see Black faces in these movements, most of the time they're going to be Africans and not Black Americans, but Africans. I just want to get that out there because that's part of this movement. That's part of this movement too. And also Hispanics. You heard him also say, and these people are very, very patient. they are investing in, and not only across America, but here in Texas, and y'all have heard me talk about it, this Turning Point USA. Now, we know that Turning Point USA was founded by Charlie Kirk, and they now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has mandated that Turning Point USA chapters be on every high school. Well, not mandated, but if they want to form a chapter on high schools in Texas, that they cannot be impeded from forming those chapters. And if a school system does not allow a Turning Point USA chapter to form on a high school campus, the state is going to come after them. Now, why is that? Because Turning Point USA high school students and college students are the next generation of these people that you just, it's a long game, it's a deep game, and these people are playing for keeps. And the tentacles are reaching further and further and further into our lives. And that's why our lives are being so impacted and will continue to be impacted. Let me show you a clip from Erica. Let me show you this first, and then I'm going to come back to Dan Patrick. Okay. Let's see. Let's see which one I want to show you first. Let's see. Let's look at this one. Let's see. Yes. Okay.
Male man, don't ever let anyone talk down to you. We need strong men out there, strong men who are convicted, that will be good leaders, good husbands, good fathers like mine. We need that. And young women, we need you to also rise up. Don't compromise yourself. Don't look at other women and compare yourself. God has created you for a purpose and a reason far greater than you and I will ever know on this side of heaven. Don't let anyone disenfranchise you because you're a young man, especially a young white male man. Don't ever let anyone talk down to you. We need strong men out there, strong men who are convicted, that will be good leaders, good husbands, good fathers like mine.
Okay, I wanted to play that from the beginning because I didn't think that you heard her from the beginning. And that is Erica Kirk, who is the president of Turning Point USA. And as I said, Turning Point USA now is on, as mandated by our governor, or allowed by our governor, on every high school in Texas. And I am told that there are 3,500 high schools. So you can imagine 3,500 Turning Point USA chapters on these campuses, and not only on high school campuses, but also on college campuses. And I'm talking about, y'all, this thing that y'all just saw with this new church that is popping up. And y'all, this is just the latest church of a number of right-wing evangelical Christian nationalism churches. And again, I say, I'm not ragging on them. I used to be one of them. That's why I can talk with such conviction about them, because I know how dangerous this movement is. And we're beginning to see it in every public policy that's coming down from DC, whether it is getting rid of DEI, whether it is forcing our troops now in this monthly prayer service that Hegseth is promoting. It is permeating throughout our country, and it is very, very dangerous now. In Turning Point USA in Texas, let me share this with you. This is our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick has pledged $1 million to Turning Point USA in Texas for these chapters. $1 million of his own money. You see him with this big fat check, and you see what those kids look like. They are not diverse at all. However, this is the future. These are future senators. These are future city council people. These are future school board members. These are future members of Congress, and they are investing in them early. And you heard Erica Kirk a few minutes ago express what she thought about and imploring the young men, the white, to not be ashamed of being a white male. And if you look at, I'm going to go back to the $1 million picture. If you look at that picture, that photo of our lieutenant governor, and you look at those who are surrounding him, it is not a diverse group at all. And that is what they are investing in. Let me share another clip with you. Let's see. Not our governor.
Let anyone disenfranchise you because you're a young man, especially a young white male man. Don't ever let
That's the kind of rhetoric that's coming to public high schools through Turning Point USA's new Club America program. Keep in mind, Turning Point USA is a $1 billion funded organization that built its power through college campus chapters. And just so we're clear, their time on college campuses had nothing to do with encouraging free speech and dialogue. Their entire model was built on recruiting young people, indoctrinating them into their ideology, giving them media training, connecting them to conservative donor networks, and then astroturfing that content into virality to flood our algorithms with right-wing propaganda. And they were really successful with it, except for like that one time. That now they're looking to start that indoctrination even younger by going directly into publicly funded high schools.
To have a Club America on every high school chapter across the country.
And what makes this whole Club America thing so alarming, I mean, there's multiple things, is that that's Governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, standing next to Erica Kirk making this announcement. And this fits very neatly into a long-term strategy from conservative think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, you know, the architects behind Project 2025, to reshape education around basically Christian nationalist ideals. And the hypocrisy is just astounding, but as I always say, hypocrisy is the point. I mean, we've heard so much crying on the right about keeping indoctrination out of schools. I mean, so far as to try to restrict actual lessons about our history, like around slavery. Don't say gay laws, book bans. The same politicians who have spent years trying to purge curriculum from being too political are now actively encouraging students to join a political organization inside these schools. And what does this mean for teachers and the curriculum going forward? Turning Point USA already runs a professor watch list, basically a list where they target academics that they deem as promoting anti-American values and leftist propaganda. Will that same surveillance culture now come into high schools? And what about Turning Point USA's very clear message to young women that their primary focus should be on finding a husband and starting a family? That the only real purpose of going to college is to get an MRS degree? Will that be part of what's promoted in these Club America programs on public school campuses? At the end of the day, to me, this is just another attack on education. They don't want to improve public schools. We see them trying to cut funding all the time. Their next play is to try to capture it from the inside. My power keeps going out, but we're going to roll with it. I'm almost done. Public schools are supposed supposed to be a truly democratic institution, a place where kids from every background, every socioeconomic status, can sit in the same room and learn to think critically about the world. Turning Point USA wants the opposite of that. They want Christian nationalist indoctrination camps created by a billion-dollar political machine inside buildings paid for by your tax dollars.
Let anyone disenfranchise you because you're a young.
She was kind of comical, but she was really communicating truth about the high schools, about Turning Point USA. And why am I starting with Turning Point USA? And why did I start with the communion of Reformed evangelical churches? Because y'all, this is just the latest. And all of this stuff that we're seeing, it's just not coming from nowhere. You know, I looked at the No Kings marches across the country, and it was fantastic to see all of those people out there marching against the No Kings. But the fact of the matter is, y'all, while that's out there publicly, behind the scenes, there is already this monarchy, this theocracy that's running our government. And we march against no more kings and no more kings. But the fact of the matter is, it is already operating like a theocratic government. If you believe that we are still a democracy, you are in fantasy land. We are not. And especially here in Texas. Now, Governor Abbott, when he mandated or with force said that these Turning Point USA chapters are going to be on every campus, let me share with you what he said at the time. Just a second.
I do want to share a word that I also told Erica about that I will double down at this time. And that is, as TPUSA, as Club America seeks to expand chapters in schools across the state, let me be clear. Any school that stands in the way of a Club America program in their school should be reported immediately to the Texas Education Agency, where I expect meaningful disciplinary action to be taken place for any stoppage of TPUSA in the great state of Texas.
So you heard it for yourself. The governor is not playing. They are not playing. And it is no small thing. It's no small thing. And I started with Texas, and we're going to go, and I'm going to show, we started with the church, because this communion of Reformed evangelical churches is no joke. So with the Turning Point USA and the chapters being mandated here in Texas, the speech that Erica Kirk was making was actually in Arkansas, because these chapters, these governors, these red state governors are going to do just what Governor Huckabee has done in Arkansas, what Governor Abbott has done here in Texas. And before y'all know it, not only are public schools going to have these chapters where you are in your state, but also, if you don't have them now, vouchers are coming to your state, just like here in Texas. Now, they have concluded a suit recently that some Muslim private schools brought against the state of Texas, because the state of Texas, when it passed this voucher act to take public money and give to private religious schools, they weren't thinking of any religion but Christianity. So some Muslim schools sued the state of Texas. And they're not going to be the only ones, because in their rush to put their religion and religious belief. And let me say this again. Let me say this. I love God. I'm a Dallas Seminary graduate. I do. But I have to be honest with y'all in telling y'all these things. And sometimes it may appear as though I am against Christianity. I'm not. I'm against religion. Christianity is a religion because of what religion does to people and what it has done to the true biblical teaching. But I'm not against any religion. I'm not against any politician. But what I am against is using religion and using the church, and it is being used now, and people don't have an idea of how it is being used against them, or how it's being used when your kid goes to school. You don't know that they have these chapters in every high school now in Texas and now in Arkansas, and how this is quietly spreading across the country to get to what? The next generation. Hear it, that pastor. Now, another thing that goes along with this are these religious councils. And I know you probably hadn't heard of the religious councils either. Donald Trump, before he was elected, made a pact with the evangelicals and evangelical churches, saying that he would appoint a religious council. And that religious council, for the first time ever in history, not only such a council being appointed, but that council having an office in the West Wing. The West Wing is the most powerful wing in the White House because that's where the president is, okay? And that's where this council is. Let me show you what this council looked like. Those of you who have been listening to me for a while, you know that I have shown you this before. This is President Kirk's Religious Liberty Commission. Now, one of them have since dropped off because she did not agree with America and Israel partnering to go to war in Iran. It was it was a woman from California. I think it must have been Carrie. But anyway, you see this group, our lieutenant governor, the same lieutenant governor that you saw, that I showed you, wrote a personal check for $1 million to Turning Point USA. He is the chairman of this Religious Liberty Commission. Now, why is that important? Because our Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has recently appointed his own Religious Liberty Commission. And I'm going to show you a clip on that. I'm trying to help you connect the dots between all of this religious, conservative, evangelical stuff that we're seeing. Now, if you look at this Religious Liberty Commission, you see people like Paula White, people that you have heard of. Now, you know, there's not, Ben Carson is always going to be the token. But that's the only African American on this council. But that's what we're dealing with in this. It truly is white Christian nationalism, and there is no shame in their game at all. Now, I mentioned that Dan Patrick, our lieutenant governor, has recently, within the past 2 weeks, appointed his own religious commission because he said that he wants to make sure that the people of Texas, those who are Christians, that their liberties and justice are not denied to them. Now, tell me how that can be so in Texas. But our lieutenant governor has appointed this commission. I'm going to show you a clip of a guy, and I want to share with you his comments because his comments are valid.
In a desperate attempt to convince Texas that it's a state welcome to only Christians, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick announced the formation of the Senate Select Committee on Religious Liberty. It's basically a replica of what Donald Trump created at the federal level, a group that pretends to care about religious liberty for all, but actually cares only about advancing conservative Christianity. And if you need evidence of Dan Patrick's intentions, all you need to do is see who he put on the committee. 6 Republicans, all of whom are conservative Christians, and 1 token Democrat who's Catholic. Dan Patrick said his goal with this group was to find ways to educate Texans on their religious liberty rights and to make sure Texans do not have those rights infringed upon. The irony, of course, is that the religious freedom of many Texans are being trampled upon by the Christians on this committee. Republicans in the state have passed law after law imposing conservative Christian values on everyone else, making life miserable for LGBTQ people, anyone who needs an abortion, and non-Christians who don't want Christianity shoved in their faces in public schools. Hell, the state was recently sued over the exclusion of Muslim schools in its voucher program, so don't fall for this. The only question is whether white Christian voters in the state will see through the charade, or whether they'll do what they always do and overwhelmingly vote for the cruelest representatives of their religion to do in the legislature what their pastors should be doing in church, making the case for their values.
He explains it pretty he explains it pretty well. So that's Dan Patrick, our lieutenant governor, and his religious council that he has appointed. And please know that John Cornyn has appointed his religious council. And on John Cornyn's religious council is Jack Graham, who is the senior pastor of Prestonwood, Robert Jeffries, who's the senior pastor of First Baptist Dallas. He's appointed the president of Abilene Christian College. And he has appointed, what's the guy's name? If I call his name, Max Lucado, to his council, among others. So the interesting thing with that, with Cornyn and appointing Jack Graham, y'all, and I'm not picking on pastors, I'm not picking on any church, but y'all need to know, if you go to these churches, that your pastor is all tied up in the game of this right-wing, conservative, evangelical movement that is seeking to upend democracy. I don't know any other way to put it. Robert Jeffries is a part of that. Jack Graham is a part of that. Franklin Graham is a part of that. Paula White is a part of that. As a matter of fact, let me share this image right here with you. Franklin Graham says that Donald Trump has been raised up by God and urges us all to be loyal, or urging the Republicans or the evangelicals to be loyal to him in the midterm, because according to Franklin Graham, Donald Trump has been raised up by God. And Paula White had this to say. Paula White is chairman of his Liberty Commission, his religious commission that I just showed you. Paula White says that saying no to President Trump is saying no to God. And to say no to President Trump would be saying no to God. This is where we are in this country. And when I entitled this, when I looked at what I was going to talk about tonight, when I say the new battleground, this is the new battleground. It's not so much Republican and Democrat. The Republican Party, as it once was, the Republican Party that I was a part of for 4 decades, does not exist anymore. It's not the Republican Party. This is a theocratic party that has one goal, and it has coalesced around this goal, and it has coalesced around Trump and people like John Cornyn, people like Paxton, people like Robert Jeffries, Jack Graham, Franklin Graham, because in their mind, there are 2 goals. One is to make America not great again, but to make America a white, Christian, nationalist country. And the second one is come hell or high water, that America will be tied to, partnered with the other side of the coin of Israel. And that's where the Christian Zionists come in. And they are all in this together. The thing about this, though, these kinds of people, with the exception of the mega pastors, Robert Jeffers and Prestonwood guy, Jack Graham, those people have Max Lucado. They have always been mainstream evangelical pastors and leaders, but they have been folded into this movement. Like I showed you at the beginning, this church, this communion of Reformed evangelical churches that is having an impact on our policy and having an impact on our lives, having an impact on our high schools, having an impact on our college campuses. You see where if you're in Texas, the University of North Texas, I don't know if the University of North Texas is going to make it or not. It's $45 million in the hole. And why is that? Because Donald Trump, because of this very same white America evangelical policy, is getting rid of, deporting, not allowing in international students. And that's not only happening in North Texas, with North Texas, that's happening all over the country. Let me share with you this. I'm going to get to Talarico. So my title was, why Talarico's faith is being challenged. Well, Talarico is a different kind of bird. And I don't know if you picked up on that pastor from the beginning with the evangelical church, called them Kirkers. If you have ever hear anyone refer to themselves as a Kirker, they are talking about, they are part of this, Peter Hicks said, part of this communion of Reformed evangelical churches. And they are spreading across America. So, which brings me to Talarico in Texas. You see where our governor stands. You see where our lieutenant governor stands. So in comes this primary. And I've told you that John Cornyn has appointed his religious commission. Whether Paxton appoints his religious commission or not remains to be seen. But Paxton has been, whether we like it or not, and I've been saying it since the beginning, Paxton is going to be their nominee. Now, what's so strange about this is Jack Graham, who is the senior pastor of Prestonwood Baptist Church, who's now part of John Cornyn's religious commission. Jack Graham, senior pastor, Prestonwood Baptist Church, is also Paxton's pastor, or so he said. Paxton has not made a comment on this commission that John Cornyn has appointed, which includes Jack Graham and Robert Jeffers and Max Lucado, those people. So, which brings me to Talarico. They hate Talarico. Now, Talarico is of a different breed of Christianity. He is on the left. He is a progressive Christian. These people are right-wing conservative Christians. Same God, supposedly. But unlike any Democratic candidate, James Talarico is a particular concern to the Republicans, and he is a particular concern to Christian, even to evangelical Christians, because he talks the same language that they talk, except he is winning over some of their own people, and they hate him for it. So this new battleground that we just laid out, this new battleground of these conservative churches, of these religious commissions that's being appointed, Turning Point USA chapters being formed all over the country in high schools and on college campuses to be the next generation. Not only that, to be the next generation of congressmen and senators and all that, but to get them registered to vote in November. Now, I don't know where you live. I don't know what state you're in, but you count the number of high schools that's in your state, and you think about that number. And these, they are not playing. They are not. So when it comes to Talarico, this new battleground that we find ourselves in, this new battleground is not the left and the right. This new battleground is between people who profess or confess to know God, who are Christians. And that's where the rub with Talarico comes in, because Talarico is not that kind of Christian, and they hate him for it. So let's share some clips with the attacks on Talarico, and we'll talk about that for a minute, and then I'm going to come back, and then we're going to have a dialogue, because I want to hear what you're thinking, and if any of this is new to you. Talarico has a different kind of message, and that message is resonating with a whole lot of people. And it's not resonating with a lot of people. And there are people, if you watch the news, let's see. I think let me start with this one.
Christian nationalism is not about the way of Jesus. It's about the pursuit of power. Christian nationalists have taken Trump as their new Christ because he's everything the first one was not. Jesus was poor. Trump is rich. Jesus was meek. Trump is a bully. Jesus lost, and Trump is obsessed with winning. I honestly think that if Donald Trump and J.D. Vance met Jesus today, they would ridicule him as a single, childless hippie. And in fact, Donald Trump Jr. explicitly rejected Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. He said, turning the other cheek has, quote, gotten us nothing. How did we get to the point where loving your enemy is weak and loving your neighbor is woke? I mean, they are literally rejecting the central teachings of Jesus because those teachings don't serve their own self-interest. Christian nationalism is not about the way of Jesus. It's about the pursuit of power. Christian.
So that's Talarico's message. That has been Talarico's message, and that is Talarico's message, and they hate him for it. Why do they hate him for it? And I thought that as I put this together, I did not think of it being Holy Week and talking about Jesus and religion and where we are, not only in our state and in this country. But that's Talarico's message. Let's look at what has been the response from the right to Talarico's message. We'll start with this one.
We're talking about that. And so I say, even in the debate, I think you might have seen it, but that I had on campus the other day, I pray that God kills him. Ultimately, that means killing his heart and raising him up to new life in Christ. That's the first thing.
We want him crucified with Christ.
That's exactly
I
right.
want him to be, I think, Saul of Tarsus, Talarico of Tarsus.
Yes.
That's what I want. Who would say, I was holding the garments while they stoned Stephen, and now I'm that's what we want.
Yes, we want death and new life, right? And if it would not be within God's will to do so, stop him by any means necessary, oh God.
Stop him by any means necessary, oh God. Now, you saw the caption on that. That guy was Hexeth's pastor. Now, he came back and later said, oh, we're talking about slaying him and killing him in Christ. But that's really not what that man meant. That's really not what he meant. And even them saying, this is what we want him to be like Paul. It wasn't Paul's choice. It was God's choice. And when you go around saying you want somebody to be slain, you want somebody to be killed, and then you end it with by any means necessary, that's serious. You saw Talarico's message of love, loving your neighbor, teaching what Jesus taught. And they came back with, no, why? Because these people are not of God. They're not. And it is about using God and using the Bible and using religion to control and to dominate and to divide. And that's what we're seeing in our government, and that's what we're seeing with our policy. And then you have somebody like Talarico to come along and say, well, I'm just as Christian as you are. They go, wait a minute. We don't like that kind of Christianity. Why? Because the Democrats have never leaned into faith. The Democrats haven't leaned into verbally expressing faith that way. But the policies of the Democrats more closely demonstrate loving your neighbor than the policies on the right. Because when you hear them on the right always talking about Christianity and the Bible, it is always in a militaristic, controlling, dominating way. Talarico is flipping the script, and he's talking about loving your neighbor, and he's talking about taking care of people, and they're going like, we can't have that. Because why? Because that is a threat to the dominance that they have. Let's look at another one. We're going to look at our governor. What does our governor have to say? Perhaps maybe I'll save our governor for last. To Talarico, this is what our governor has to say about Talarico. Let me see if I have another one. I don't think I have another one of Talarico. I have this man talking about him, but our governor, this is what he had to say.
Here's the deal. You've seen the crazy stuff that has surfaced about things he's posted on social media. And however crazy he is, I can tell you his votes are even worse. He is in the form of Beto O'Rourke. He's crazy, and we are not going to allow the Talarico takeover of the state of Texas. Here's the deal. You've seen.
So our governor said, we're not going to allow the takeover of Talarico in Texas. The governor says that Talarico is crazy. He says that Talarico's message is crazy. But this is the same governor who has signed off on Turning Point USA chapters, and the same governor who is so Christian and so evangelical. But when it comes to Talarico, he's crazy, even though Talarico is teaching and preaching the same thing that comes from the same Bible. That's why it's not about the Bible. It's not about God's message. It's not about Jesus's message. It is about control. It's about division. It's about domination. With women staying home, not voting, and men, white men, making all of the decisions. And that's how you heard Erica Kirk. That's why I wanted to play her first. You heard what Erica Kirk said about the white men, and the office of what is it? The EEOC now, is that what, I don't know if that's what they still call it, but they are actively looking for and encouraging white men to file racial discrimination charges. And I'm not trying to be racial. I'm not trying to be religious. I'm not trying to be into that. All I'm trying to do is just explain to you and reveal to you what's happening behind the scenes. And while there's no kings, y'all, we already have who they think is king. You see where they tried to, and thank God for this former retired lawyer who filed a suit and stopped it, where they were imprinting this gold coin with Trump's face on this coin. Guess who did that? The Romans did that in the first century. Caesar. That's why Jesus said, render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and render unto God what belongs to God. It was Caesar's name, face, that was on the coin. That's what they're trying to do with Donald Trump. this monarchy, this theocracy, this authoritarian government is beyond authoritarianism. It is beyond that. It is also religious. This theocratic, conservative Christianity. Forget the Emoluments Clause. Forget the separation of church and state. All of it is like this now. The Johnson Amendment, that was one of the things that Donald Trump promised the white evangelicals, that he was going to do away with the Johnson Amendment. Now, you know, it takes an act of Congress to do that. But, you know, he signs an order and people look the other way. And that's why you have pastors now able to endorse candidates from the pulpit without any repercussions, without them losing their 501c3 status or whatever churches are. And I did a video on this too, because there was a suit filed down in East Texas by 2 churches who filed against the federal government and in the Eastern District, and they won. They prevailed, which means that you can come to church now and into the pulpit could be a politician preaching his or her message without any repercussions. And that's where we are now. Let me share this with you. Another viewpoint on Talarico and why the hatred towards him. Let me make sure there are 2 more. Okay, this one, listen to this guy.
James Talarico is 36 years old, so he could wait another 30 years to run for president and still be younger than Donald Trump was in 2015. I'm Jason Boyette, and I write about religion. Talarico is a Democrat, and he just won the Texas Senate primary by doing something Democrats almost never do in Texas. He ran straight at religion. He's a Presbyterian seminary student. He wants to become a pastor. And he's built this huge audience by arguing that Christian faith should push people toward compassion and make them opposed to Christian nationalism. And language about faith was central to his campaign, which now awaits the winner of the Republican primary runoff. And Talarico wasn't just signaling or using Jesus language. I mean, his platform has legitimately been the New Testament. He spent the primary talking about politics in explicitly Christian terms. Here's why this is a big story. In Texas, and you know, in a lot of other states, religion has typically been a Republican advantage. Talarico is trying to flip that script because he's talking about progressive politics as a true reflection of Christian faith. Loving your neighbor, personal dignity, taking care of people, moral critiques of power. And you may not agree with him. Whether or not you do, you still need to pay attention because Texas is still very religious. And Democrats keep leaving this entire religion lane completely uncontested. And so Talarico is running a campaign that says, you know what, faith isn't owned by any one political party. He's testing whether that message can scale beyond his own social media and into actual statewide votes. And if he's successful, it could change American politics. Anyway, I cover this stuff every week in my Religioverse newsletter if you want to read instead of scroll.
Okay. So the answer to the question is, why is Talarico's faith being challenged? Because Talarico is challenging white evangelicals on their terms and on their ground, and they don't like it. As he said, the religion lane has been uncontested. Even though Democrats, especially Black Democrats, are very, very religious and church-going people, they have not, like white evangelicals and white Christian nationalists, made faith such a centerpiece and calling card and what I want to call it, political campaign as the Republicans have. And just speaking as a Black woman in the South growing up, Black people typically don't talk it, they do it. They do it. As far as loving your neighbor, as far as looking out for one another, as far as being compassionate and having empathy and love and showing kindness. That is just part and parcel of Black Christians. They don't go out and broadcast it. They don't run it on policy. They don't use it as part of their campaign material. They just live it. Live it. It is who they are. But now, and so since there has been such silence, even white Christians on the left, it's not anything that they broadcast and make a big deal out of. They just live it. L-I-V-E-I-T, not live it, L-I-V-I-D. They just live it. But the white evangelicals, since the 1980s and 90s with James Dobson and Focus on the Family and Christian Coalition and all of those organizations, they captured the mantle of Christianity in public space and they have run with it. And now it's to the point where, since there was such silence on the left, even though there have been always been back from the beginning, even in the civil rights movement, even before then, there have always been people on the left who were people of faith. It just wasn't part of campaigns and political campaigns and bastardizing the religion in order to gain power. And that's the difference what we're seeing today. And in comes somebody like Opie Taylor. I call him Opie. In comes Opie, James Talarico, and have nerve enough to challenge white evangelicals on their turf in their language, and they hate him for it. They want him gone. They want him dead. They want him gone. Even our governor, you heard what he said. He said he's crazy. He's crazy. But yet he's speaking the same language as Abbott. He's speaking the same language as Dan Patrick. He's speaking the same language as Franklin Graham. But the difference is that it's coming from somebody on the left. And evangelicals, white evangelicals, and now with this coalescing of Christian Zionists, Christian nationalists, whites, racist people who are using Christianity as a front. Talarico better be careful, because these are the people, like that guy said, Hex says, Pastor, he said it in a biblical way that we want him killed, we want him slain. And then at the end, they tried to fix it and say, oh, we talking about like Paul, like he was like, but then if you hear what the guy said at the end, if God chooses not to do it that way, then we are praying that he take him out by any means necessary. By any means necessary. They're not playing. So the new battleground, it's not right and left. It's not Republican and Democrat. The new battleground is what we're seeing now. This religious proliferation in our government that's impacting our policies, that's even gone, that SAVE Act. You heard what the man said. They don't even believe women should vote. That's why it's no big deal in this SAVE Act, although women, majority are women who would have changed their name from their birth name. That's why they're saying, oh no, you got to go back and get your birth certificate. Oh no, you have to have your passport. Oh no, you can't use your driver's license. Oh no, you can't use an ID. Why? Because they don't want women to vote. I don't care if you're a white woman. I don't care if you're a Hispanic woman. I don't care if you're a black woman. Just the mere fact that you are a female says that you should not vote, that should be the male's responsibility. And even at that, you heard that guy say, he said it should be a household vote. Well, when it's a household vote in this conservative evangelical atmosphere, that means that it is the man. Because why? Because he is the head of the what? He is the head of the household, and what he says goes. And who he wants to vote for is how that vote is going to go. Y'all, I know it sounds crazy. I know this sound like this woman don't know. I'm telling y'all, this is the America that we're living in. And this is what's driving the America that we're in. I have one last clip to show you, and this guy speaks the truth and nothing but the truth. Let's see, showing you. Let's see. Yeah, this guy right here.
Hey, y'all. I've been seeing some of my fellow Americans freak out about my Presbyterian brother, James Talarico, doing some heavy lifting in Texas right now. And it made me think of a story in the Gospels where the religious leaders accuse Jesus of being satanic. I don't know if you remember this story. They accused him of being satanic because they had some doctrinal disagreements with Jesus. And Jesus responds simply by saying, is Satan divided? If I'm working for Satan, why am I healing people? Why am I counteracting Satan's work, which is to bring destruction? The religious leaders accused Jesus of doing Satan's bidding, not because there was any evidence of that, but simply because they were scared. They were scared because they saw Jesus rising in influence. They saw that Jesus was really taking their following because he came in not only with a message, but with a ministry that was bringing healing, that was representing the marginalized. And I think that's a bit of what James Talarico is doing in Texas today. And it's freaking the evangelical world out because they thought they had a monopoly on religion. They thought they had a monopoly on Christianity. But hey, y'all, you don't. You don't. Hey, it's a dark, dark business to get into calling a brother in Christ who's bringing a healing message into the world satanic. So I'd stay away from it because it sounds like, just like the religious leaders in Jesus's day, you're the one doing the satanic work.
Yeah. So he said literally kind of the same thing, that the religion lane was uncontested. And now you have somebody on the left that is contesting this faith, this power, and this leadership that has formed in America. So with the school vouchers, the public school vouchers, public school money going now to private schools, and that is spreading all over the country with these vouchers, with the religious councils being formed, beginning with Donald Trump. And there was a video that I did, I think last fall, where there was this big meeting held in Colorado at this church, and promises were made by Donald Trump. Promises were made that he is carrying out, and it has to do with the religious things that we're seeing. It has to do with the policies that we're seeing. It has to do with the programming that we're seeing. And here comes this guy in Texas with this message of hope and love and all this, contesting this, and they hate him for it. They hate him for it. So the battleground is the test now between religion and public policy. That's the battleground. And guess what's losing? Public policy is losing. Whenever you see a church that has been formed like that, Communion of Reformed, and I want you to remember this name because you're going to be seeing it, you're going to be hearing it a lot more. The Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches. When you see this church now setting up and planting a church in Washington, D.C., and having as much influence as it has, not only on public policy, but also on our military, partnered with the Christian Zionists, who believe that America and Israel are tied at the hip, and that so goes, as goes Israel, so goes, America should go too, that same way. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing over in Iran. And it goes back to this battleground here in America, this religious battleground. And Talarico, that's why he's being challenged. And that's why Talarico needs to be careful, because these people are rabid, and they have had this solo for so long, and shame on the Democrats for not being more vocal, because it's not that Democrats are not Christian people. The Democrats that I know are. Democrats I've always known are. But it was just never an issue. But now Talarico is making it an issue. And before y'all saying I'm comparing Talarico to Jesus, I am not, and wouldn't dare do that. But if you look at the parallels between the first century and what was happening in the first century with the Roman government, and if you look at what's happening in the 21st century, what's happening with our government, what was happening in the first century with the Pharisees, with the Sadducees, with the Zealots, you're seeing in the 21st century with the evangelicals, with the Christian nationalists, with these reformed evangelical churches. It's the same kind of zealous for religion that there is. And then you had Jesus to step into that environment and say no. He wanted to talk about love and loving your neighbor and all of that. So here we are, even with the coins, as I said earlier, the coins imprinted with Caesar's face, illegally printed. If this lawyer hadn't stepped in and filed this lawsuit, the same coins would have been reproduced in the 21st century with Donald Trump's face. Render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, render unto Trump what belongs to Trump. And you have this little guy who's holding up his hand saying, wait a minute, that's not the way of Jesus. And that's why they're coming after him. And that's why his faith is being challenged. They are rabid because power concedes nothing. And right now, the power is in the religion, the right-wing religion. It controls the policy, not government, not Congress, religion. And that's the new battleground. That is the battleground. And it is the scales are tipped to the religious, because that's where the policies are being made. And that is what's influencing our policies. Every last one of them. Every last one of them. They want to return to a time where white males ruled. Females, doesn't matter if you're a white female, it doesn't matter if you're a black female, but the females were home. And, Charlie Kirk preached that. But that's what this whole, and if this SAVE Act passes, Katie barred the door, because it's over. It is done. It is over. That's all I have. So I want to tell y'all about that. And when you hear about the Kirkers, when you hear about this communion of reformed evangelical churches, It's just not, they are Christian nationalists, but make no mistake about it, there are different factions of Christian nationalism. That's just one of the factions. I'm going to have Dr. David Brockman on later in the summer, and we're going to do a show again. And I think that people are going to be shocked to see and understand just how many tentacles this white Christian nationalism has. It's deep. And Talarico, he needs to be careful because they are after him. They really do want to annihilate him. Our governor calls him crazy. Our governor swears there will be no Talarico takeover in Texas. But if y'all look at the polls, Talarico would beat John Cornyn. Talarico would beat Ken Paxton. And the race is going to come down to Ken Paxton and Talarico. I'm just saying, I've been saying that for months, and I'm not going to change. And that's why Cornyn, y'all, is running to coalesce and have his campaign to coalesce around these big name pastors. Now, why do you suppose John Cornyn just got the endorsement of Phil Graham? I thought Phil Graham was dead. He ain't dead. He doesn't endorse Cornyn. Rick Perry endorsed Cornyn. Now, Cornyn is from Houston, right? But as I told you, and I want you to hear me when I say this because it's not talked about, it's not broadcast anywhere, but North Texas, Dallas, Texas, the North Texas region, I want you to hear me and read my lips good, is ground zero for Christian nationalism in America. Right here, North Texas, Dallas. And y'all know, right, that the Republicans are having an unusual midterm conference. Guess where they're going to have a midterm conference at? In Dallas. Why do you suppose that is? Well, that's where Prestonwood is, Jack Graham. That's where First Baptist is, Robert Jeffress. John Cornyn is from Houston. Houston. It ain't Houston, we got a problem. It's Dallas, we got a problem. And we are it. We're ground zero. So that's where we are. And God bless the people, the No Kings March. God bless them. But y'all, that train is way, way, way down the track. Way down the track. The only thing that's going to stop this train is if Democrats take control of Congress in November. And the Republicans know it. Donald Trump knows it. And that's why they are doing everything that they can. Now, don't think, and I've talked about this before, as we speak, the voting records of most of the states, the red states particularly, the red states and the blue states are being sued by the Department of Justice to get the voting records. Now, the voting records that they do have, I told you the process. The Department of Justice is purging those records as we speak. And then they're going to hand them back to the states. Greg Abbott handed the Department of Justice our voting records in December. So the Department of Justice now is working on those voting records to purge them. And then they're going to send them back to the states so the states can purge them further. And then the states are going to hand them back to the DOJ for a final purging from the DOJ. And then the DOJ must have them back to the states, I think by August, in time for it to be legal to meet that time frame for the November election. So that's what's going on now with the voting records. And then the ICE agents at the airports, those are dry runs for the ICE agents that they're going to dispatch at voting locations. What county went through with changing the voting locations and had all of that. All of that. It's all of that. So the vulnerable Christians, the vulnerable religious people going nowhere, y'all. For the most part, they got it locked down. So my goal on Tuesday night, our Tuesday night lives, not, political rants, is to tell you point blank to your face what's happening in this country, particularly as it relates to on the faith end now. This channel is not going to be a religious channel. I'm not a religious person. But at the same time, I believe that it's necessary and incumbent upon me, the platform that God has given to me, to tell you the truth about what's impacting you and what's going to impact you. What's going to impact your children if you have children in high schools. Now, why do you suppose there are no Hispanic youth organizations on these high school campuses? There are no youth African American organizations on these campuses. It's not even a thought. And the Muslims are having to sue to get access to vouchers that have been set aside for religious private schools. They didn't have in mind Islam. They didn't have in mind that. They had in mind white evangelical private Christian schools with these vouchers. And that's why the Muslims sued the state of Texas. And that's the state of play. That's the state of play. Who will win, Cornyn or Paxton? Paxton is going to win. I wish I almost played a clip from Paxton. Paxton got CPAC's endorsement. Paxton also has Turning Point USA's endorsement, not John Cornyn. MAGA in Texas, to answer your question, hates John Cornyn. That's why John Cornyn is having to go and get all of this support from people like Rick Perry, people like Phil Graham, people like dragging up people from that I thought, people hadn't heard of in years, and going and get these prominent pastors like Robert Jeffress. Jeffress endorsed him from the pulpit, like Jack Graham, like Max Lucado. John Cornyn is having to do all of this and get these kinds of people to endorse him because he doesn't have the support of MAGA Texans. It don't matter if Robert Jeffress, and that's why Donald Trump didn't make any, because Donald Trump was between a rock and a hard place. Now, Donald Trump's Robert Jeffress, for obvious reasons, it would look bad for a Robert Jeffress and a Jack Graham, even though Jack Graham was Ken Paxton's pastor. Ken Paxton said that. I didn't. He said that, when he was going through his trial and all that. He was a member of Prestonwood, or Jack Graham was his pastor. But ain't no way in the world, because those pastors are who they are, their mouth have to endorse John Cornyn. But what they do when they get in the voting booth is a whole nother thing, because Ken Paxton is MAGA's man. That's just it. They love him. That's why CPAC endorsed him. John Cornyn didn't even bother to go to CPAC. That's why Turning Point USA endorsed Paxton and not John Cornyn, because Paxton is the man, not John Cornyn, because John Cornyn has never been MAGA, you see. He's never been MAGA, you see. And so when you hear these pastors, and you will hear every last one of them, Hager, what's the guy in San Antonio? The Zionist pastor, the plump guy, John Hagee. Yeah. You'll hear him, you'll hear Robert Jeffress, And you'll hear Jack Graham talk about coining's marriage, and that he's been married to his wife for 40 some years or 30 some years or whatever, because they want to draw this contrast between him and Paxton. But that's not going to make a difference between the voters. MAGA voters, Texas voters, Paxton is the man. So to answer your question, Paxton is going to win. Better question is asked Dorothy, was she? I'm not a whole lot of things. I tell you what I am not. I'm not concerned about what you think about me or what anybody else think about me either. I'm going to tell you that right now. I ain't here for you. I ain't here for nobody but to tell the truth. You can take it like you want to take it. So that's where we are. And y'all, these people are not nice people. They carry the mantle. That's why I'm not putting some of their comments up there. I see y'all's comment. Y'all think people be putting down, people be putting stuff in your comments, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But that's where we are. And that's where we are in Texas, and that's where we are in the country, and that's what we're seeing. And that's where the battleground is. And that's why they're coming after Talarico. Because Talarico is contesting their religiosity, and they don't like it. And we'll see what happens in November when it comes down between him, and I am betting on it's going to be between him and Paxton. And if the vote were taken today, if the polls are right, and we know polls are just a moment in time, if the polls are correct, Talarico would win. He would win over Corning, and he would win over Paxton. So there you have it. Y'all, I'm going to start my community meeting on the porch next week. I don't know what I was thinking about. This is Holy Week. And I do my devotions at night. So y'all have a good evening. And I hope to see you next week if the Lord says the same. And it's going to be April. Y'all take care, and I will see you next time.